Good evening, I'm Leanne Gerari. Welcome to Business PNG, your weekly look at business news and updates. The national government and Bank South Pacific recently partnered to begin the first home ownership scheme. The scheme aims to provide affordable housing for all Papua New Guineans, with preference going to first home buyers. On the show tonight, we speak to CEO for BSP Limited, Robin Fleming, as he gives us an insight into the home ownership scheme. Bank South Pacific, with the support of the national government, is set to make home ownership more affordable and easier for all Papua New Guineans through the proposed First Home Ownership Scheme. When officially launching the FHOS early this month, Prime Minister Peter O'Neill urged Papua New Guineans to embrace the scheme, calling it an important avenue that will play a role in addressing the housing issue faced by many Papua New Guineans and contribute to wealth creation opportunities. According to Prime Minister O'Neill, every year the government will be providing $200 million to BSP to ensure the bank lends to as many Papua New Guineans as possible.
The government is just providing funds so that they can borrow, not even security. We are not securing the loan. We are just making funds available where the bank is going to lend to our citizens.
His comments were echoed by BSP Group CEO Robin Fleming. Through the support of the national government, steps are being taken to establish a long-term deposit base which addresses liquidity and market risks associated with long-term lending, such as housing finance. As a result of these actions, BSP will be able to provide housing loans to approved first home borrowers over a 40-year term and at an interest rate of 4% per annum. Both the national government and BSP believe that the FHOS will help address housing issues and offer wealth creation opportunities for many Papua New Guineans. The FHOS is not a guarantee facility. It is a product that will be offered by BSP adopting a commercial approach, although over a much longer loan term and at a somewhat concessional interest rate. The availability of affordable land and housing packages is also essential, and this will require the support of the government and private sector participants from the housing industry. Business PNG recently spoke to CEO for BSP Limited, Robin Fleming, as he elaborated on the housing scheme. Tonight on the show we have Mr. Robin Fleming, CEO of BSP Limited. Mr. Fleming, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
How are you?
I'm great.
Okay. So the national government recently partnered with BSP to provide an avenue for Papua New Guineans to own their own houses. Can you tell us a little bit about this? Why did BSP feel the need to partner with the government?
The housing needs one which is increasing for everyone in Papua New Guinea, and it's been one of the government's objectives for many years. At the moment, what the government's been looking at is some of the key enablers to ensure Papua New Guineans can get into their own homes, and what impediments have been in place that have restricted them from being able to own their own homes.
Sure.
And one of those has been around the lending availability at a rate and a term which would provide Papua New Guineans the opportunity to take a loan with a bank at a rate which permits them to repay the loan based on their normal salary and earnings, and also perhaps a housing allowance. The facility that we have in place with the government is that the government is providing funding to BSP. They're not underwriting the loan, or they're not guaranteeing the loan, they're just providing funding to BSP so that BSP can match our liquidity and market risk to be able to provide a loan at an interest rate of 4% fixed over terms of up to 40 years. By having that lower fixed rate interest, plus having terms of up to 40 years, that reduces the repayment amount that an individual needs to pay to be able to qualify for a home in the range of between 250 to 400,000. The scheme is open to all Papua New Guineans. There are some conditions. It has to be leasehold land, not on customary land. They have to be in permanent employment to be able to repay the loan. And the government has also required that the people who buy those houses under the First Home Ownership Scheme don't on-sell them for capital gain, not to be able to make a quick profit, but to be able to purchase a house for the longer term occupation of the borrower plus their family, because we all know that invariably there's a number of family members whose housing needs are dealt with and accommodated by one particular breadwinner.
So you mentioned the 4% per annum.
Yes.
Is there a guarantee that this will remain and not increase within the years to come?
It remains so long as the agreement remains in place. The government in the agreement with BSP has said that it will keep an amount of funds with us at 0%. So long as, I have great confidence, every confidence this government will continue to abide by that agreement, and future governments, that's the guarantee that we have, the guarantee of the government that they won't change that scheme.
Okay. So I understand that the loans are not government guaranteed.
No.
What does this mean?
It means that the security or collateral for the house is the loan itself, is the property itself that's being purchased. At times in the past, government guarantees have been seen by borrowers as the ultimate repayment risk being with the government and not the individual, and government, like the bank, clearly want the borrowers to know that it is their primary risk, and perhaps those of family members who are also living in the house with them, to repay that loan to the commercial bank.
Okay.
In the event they don't repay the loan, then the bank would have recourse to be able to sell the house under its normal mortgages. But equally, we feel that with by lowering the repayment rate, and employers, perhaps such as government, providing special housing allowances to those individuals, that the repayments rates should be much less and far more affordable. Equally, we will be saying to borrowers that the housing repayment should be your first and foremost repayment need. At times, we also have recourse to payday lenders and other lenders because we're not necessarily living within our means, or the demands of relatives or friends are a little bit too high. First and foremost, repay your housing loan, because the housing loan is where you, your family and your future family are going to be accommodated.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fleming, for your time.
Thank you very much.
Once again, that was Mr. Robin Fleming, CEO of Bank South Pacific Limited. After the break, it's all about BRIC, or simply BRIC. Don't go anywhere. Brazil, Russia, India, and China, better known as BRIC, are four emerging economies who are most likely to join the US among the top 5 global economies in the 21st century. First coined by economist Jim O'Neill from Goldman Sachs, the BRIC are economies most likely to succeed based on his research on the key economic drivers of consumption, urbanization, globalization, and innovation.
Brazil, Russia, India, and China are a select group of large developing countries. BRIC, as they are commonly called, are distinguished from a host of other promising emerging markets by their demographic and economic potential to rank among the world's largest and most influential economies in the 21st century. Together, the four original BRIC countries comprise more than 2.8 billion people, or 40% of the world's population, cover more than a quarter of the world's land area over 3 continents, and account for more than 25% of global GDP. A country's population and demographics, among other factors, directly affect the potential size of its economy and its capacity to function as an engine of global economic growth and development. As early as 2003, Goldman Sachs forecasted that China and India would become the first and third largest economies by 2050, with Brazil and Russia capturing the 5th and 6th spots. After nearly 10 years of talks, the group invited South Africa to join, regarding it as the gateway to Africa. The BRICS designation was first coined by Jim O'Neill of Goldman Sachs in a 2001 paper titled "The World Needs Better Economic BRICS." The BRIC countries have since gone on to meet and seek out opportunities for cooperation in trade, investment, infrastructure development, and other arenas. In July 2014, the group agreed to set up its own bank, now called the New Development Bank, with $50 billion in initial capital to finance infrastructure and sustainable development projects similar to the World Bank. But what is the relevance of these 5 promising economies to our own developing country, Papua New Guinea, and the rest of the South Pacific? David Thomas, an expert on the BRIC economies and a keynote speaker at the recent PNG Advantage conference, believes that Papua New Guinea and the Pacific can learn a lot from the BRICS, and the creation of the BRICS Bank provides opportunities for the Pacific. Business PNG recently had a chat with Mr. Thomas on the subject matter.
Welcome back to Business PNG. Tonight we're covering the events from the recent PNG Advantage 2014 Business Summit held at the Gateway in Port Moresby. And with me in the studio tonight, David Thomas from, I think, Global Consulting, who's a keynote speaker. David, welcome to Business PNG, welcome to Port Moresby, welcome to Papua New Guinea.
Thank you, David.
During your keynote address, you were speaking to us about the BRIC economies. Can you tell the viewers what are the BRIC economies?
Thank you, David. Yeah, the BRIC economies are the big four economic powerhouses of the future: Brazil, Russia, India and China. This was an acronym invented in 2001 by an economic researcher called Jim O'Neill, who was the head of research at Goldman Sachs, and he came up with this idea of how the future would look, and started raising money off the back of that idea. But since then, the BRIC leaders now get together. They've become a BRIC group themselves, and more investors are now looking at ways in which they can invest in the BRIC.
You used another acronym for BRIC. What was that? For
the
BRIC?
next big four are MINT: Mexico, Indonesia, Nigeria, Turkey. So they would be at a second level, because the BRICS are by far the biggest, but they're also very relevant for the future.
These BRIC economies, are they, I mean, obviously we all talk about China, we don't talk so much about India, but I mean, India is just as dominant in the economy as, well, it's not as big as China, but it's a very dominant economy.
Well, it's quite big, and it has there's a lot of people in India, so it's very fastly catching up with China, but they do have some challenges in India. It's a democracy, there's a lot of bureaucracy. They don't have the ability that China has to manage things on a top-down basis. So India is definitely a country of the future, but it has stalled a bit recently.
I assume that a lot of, I mean, the reason we had you for the summit was, how does this relate to Papua New Guinea? And one of your slides said choose your friends carefully. Why would Papua New Guinea engage with economies? I guess it's India. I guess for us it's basically India and China out of those four.
I think China is critical to PNG. You know, China is the big investor in this region. They've spent the last 30 years dealing with energy security and investing in mining resources assets. The next 30 years will be about their investment in their next major priority, which is food security. And I can't think of a better opportunity for PNG than to find ways in which they can tap into Chinese money to develop the food supply chain.
We'll come back to that. I mean, clearly a lot of a lot of the interest in China would be on the LNG, but and over the years they've been putting the thumbprints on mining resources, etc. Have they done that in this economy, and are they going to continue to do that?
Yeah, they will. They definitely will continue. They want to invest in the supply chain. They want to have more access to resources. They want to control pricing more, and the best way to do that is to invest in it and start taking ownership of that. That's a challenge for all of us.
Is that a little bit of a threat to us?
Well, we have to manage that carefully because we can't give everything away. We have to. It's about investment and partnerships and joint ventures, and using Chinese money to increase supply ultimately.
Talking about this, the Chinese money, you indicate it's quite a big figure that these guys are sitting on, these reserves, and it's almost like there is not enough investment in China. I mean, is it a huge sum of money? Is it?
About $3 trillion of reserves, and much of that is US dollar denominated, and they need to diversify. And their way to do that is to what they call go out and invest overseas, and investing in this region will be a big part of that.
Have they planned to go out? You talked about planning.
Absolutely, you know, no, they have. It's part of their 5-year plan is to go out, invest overseas, and invest in real corporate assets in different countries, in different currencies. Start to influence things like supply of resources that they need, but also to invest in sectors that they need to understand better, because they're building their own. They're building their own economy, and areas like tourism, education, healthcare, these are sectors they'll invest in.
In those areas, are they likely to be small steps till they find out, or are they going to come in bolus.
Well, everything's big in China. They only do things in a big way, and
Yeah,
that's a challenge because we're all small countries in the
Yes,
region,
yeah.
and we don't know how to absorb billions of dollars in investment. So they have to sort of learn a bit about how to dip their toe in, and we have to learn about how to manage that relationship.
A recent ANZ report imagining the Asian future, Papua New Guinea and Asian future, presented a very scary figure of a low of 112 billion US dollars, high of 170 billion US that PNG needed to make in terms of infrastructure to realise a lot of this potential we have. And just recently government has implemented PPP legislation. Is that something that the Chinese get into? I mean, do they get into PPPs?
And they're doing
major
that in
infrastructure
other
projects?
Yeah, definitely. They've done that already in Australia. They've invested in ports and regional centres.
Okay.
They're already doing that, and I expect they'll do a lot more. The key now is for us to engage with them, and I was suggesting that PNG must have a China engagement strategy around sister city relationships.
Yeah, talk to us a little bit more about how we do that. I think we're all, quite frankly, there's a lot of people worry about this huge looming shadow. Is it something we should be scared of?
Well, I don't think so. I think we have to manage it well, and we could certainly. It could be scary if we give everything away.
Yeah.
We have to be smart, and we haven't always been that smart with Asian investment. The Japanese came in and bought lots of assets that perhaps in hindsight we shouldn't have been so quick to sell. As it turned out, it worked out quite well because Japan hit the wall in '91 and we were able to buy all those assets back. But I don't think that will happen
China's
with
not going to hit the wall, is it?
That's right. I don't think so. So I think we've got to be smart about working with China, and I think the way to do that is to build relationships at a city level, at a country level, and even at a business level, and start to invite them to come to conferences like this. I think that would be a good idea, and for us to start taking delegations to China.
More when we come back. Stay with us.
There's quite a rich history of Chinese business and investment already in Papua New Guinea, with what we euphemistically call the Rabaul Chinese who came after the war, and a new influx of mainland Chinese, and which of the is that where they want to go to invest, or is it a wider view they have?
Oh, much wider. But I think the Chinese communities in places like PNG and Australia and other countries around the region is the bridge. So I think we should get much better at engaging the Chinese PNG community in the China relationship, because they can form the bridge, if you like, between the two.
Yeah. So what would you say to our government to mobilise on this? Because I think we're pretty well aware we're not the only country in the region that's thinking about this. Yeah. But we've got to get off our tail and get involved in it. What would you say to government, apart from, we've talked about the socialise, the chamber, the sister cities, and that, but on a bigger scale, what do you think government needs to do?
Start with a plan. Yeah. The plan is what in the next 5 years, how could we absorb billions of dollars of investment into our food supply chain, and what would that produce? And show the return, show the opportunity, show the result of that kind of investment. Start with a plan, and then take that to the Chinese. Show them how they can get safe, secure, quality food from a reliable source.
Are we taking it to a government level? We're taking it to businesses?
Yes. Well, everything starts with government in China. Yes, so you start with the government because everything starts there, and then after doing that, then you work your way down into the investment and business community. But state-owned enterprises in China are desperately looking to invest in the food supply chain, and a lot of them start with government sponsorship and control.
Yeah. We've talked an awful lot about China. I'm always quite bemused by the lack of engagement with India.
Yeah, I agree.
Just as big an economy. I mean, what are the differences? I mean, being European, I tend to think their not their culture, but the governance, etc., is embedded in Britain. It's
which is good. Yeah, an English rule of law, an English style system. India is a very exciting opportunity for the future. It's just had some problems lately.
Yes.
There's too much bureaucracy, there's a little bit too much corruption, and the new government, we hope, will push through all of that and change India for the good and the future. The big opportunity with India is their young demographics. You know, the average age in India is 25. So they've got this enormous wave of opportunities stemming from young people hitting the market and hitting as consumers and workers at the same time. That's a threat for India, but it's also a major opportunity.
But it's also, I mean, it doesn't need to become a threat for us. I mean, Papua New Guinea's population nearly 50% under 18.
Right.
So, you know, if these guys are seeing the opportunities and want to leave India, the door, I don't think is open. We've got a problem there already.
Yeah, right.
So why, you know,
why not?
Well, I mean, you talk about corruption, and I mean, no corruption in China?
Oh yeah, no. There's corruption everywhere. There's corruption in many countries that you know that probably pretend they're not corrupt.
Yes.
So there's corruption everywhere, but India, for some reason, has become out of favour. And part of the reason is that they're quite self-sufficient. India, there's not much that they need. Unlike China, which needs energy security, food security, India actually has quite a lot already, and there's a slight arrogance about foreigners. So you have to work a little bit harder in India to get their attention. But I would encourage PNG to build the India relationship and the China relationship, because I think these are the two economies of the future.
This is a huge agenda you're building here, David, for us. I mean, the China agenda is scary, but to then lock it with India as well.
Yeah.
Brazil. I don't think I'm going to go into Russia, because I'm really not sure where Russia's going at the moment, but apart from trying to grow itself a little bit. You talked about these, was it four or three main issues for an investor: the land and the capital.
People and capital.
Yeah. Explain this.
Well, I have this view that the key three economic inputs are land, people and capital. And if you look at those issues, you see that the BRICS have an abundance of all three. And that's what makes them the BRICS. So does the US. So those five economies are the big giants of the future. And then it's interesting to look at other countries that have either lots of people and some money but not enough land, and other countries that, like Australia, for example, which has land and capital but a very small population. These are where some of the synergies are in the future. I think Indonesia is an important market for this region because firstly, it has a lot of people, 240 million people, and it has sufficient capital. What it has to do, of course, is open up for foreign investment and continue its rapid urbanisation. It's the fastest urbanising country in the world.
And it's only next door.
And it's right next door. And it needs access to land, and PNG offers you know, huge resources to Indonesia. I would think that relationship would be pretty critical.
Yeah. So thank you very much for your involvement, and we look forward to seeing you back in Papua New Guinea.
Thank you, David.
Thank you. That was David Thomas, the CEO of Global Thinking, one of the speakers in the PNG Advantage Summit Investment and Infrastructure Conference held in Port Moresby in September 2014. That's it from Business PNG.
And we've come to the end of our show. However, for more information, if you would simply like to view this episode again, be sure to visit MTV online. That's mtv.com.pg/business. Or to join the conversation, follow us on Twitter at Business PNG using the hashtag Business PNG. Until next week, have an enjoyable evening. I'm Leah Jarari, and this is Business PNG.